Hi everyone, Tea Drinker here, and today I'm reviewing Chainsaw Man Episode 4. I've just finished watching this episode for the very first time, so if you would like to see the full uncut reaction to this episode, as well as every single episode from the entire series for just $1 a month, you can get all of that on my Patreon. So without further ado, here is the review. I was definitely a bit taken aback by this episode, in a good way, in the sense that the show seems to illustrate they're going for a more minimal approach with the plot than I would have expected, and in a way I think it's actually something of, I don't know if welcome relief is the right term to use, not necessarily that I would have been disappointed had they not gone this direction, but you'll understand what I mean. I'll talk about the plot. First of all, we continue immediately with the aftermath of Denji fighting the Bat Devil. He has successfully rescued Pawa and her cat, and she is so enamored she even says that Denji is allowed to fulfill his part of the promise, and we know what that is. And with that idea in mind, Denji has lost so much blood that he's now unable to successfully fight the Leech Devil. The Leech Devil who has now appeared, we see like the bit of chainsaw just about coming out of Denji's head, but nonetheless he wants to fulfill his dreams, and that's what allows him to fight the Leech Devil. And of course Hayakawa comes out in time to save him. Hayakawa, sorry, that's his name, comes out in the nick of time to save him with the Fox Devil. Denji's arm gets connected once again through a blood transfusion. Hayakawa offers to spare Denji and Pawa's life in exchange for them now obeying by the rules. And as a result of this, it is... wait, let me look up what's the name of the boss. I always forget the name of the boss, beginning with Makima. That's it. I had the list of character names in front of me in case I forgot. She ends up saying to Hayakawa that now Pawa and Denji are to live with you, because I wouldn't trust anyone else other than you to do it. There's this really interesting sequence lasting about I'd say almost 2 entire minutes of screen time, in which we see Hayakawa kind of naturally going about his day. When I was watching this episode, I actually briefly forgot that himself and Denji lived with each other. 2 of them going about their day, kind of establishing a new equilibrium. We kind of think that this is going to be the new normal. We've kind of gone back to a new equilibrium, except who's at the door? Only Pawa, because Makima has said that the 3 of them are to live together. We see that the boys find it very difficult to live with this girl. And all of this, of course, comes to a climax with Pawa telling Denji that she is giving him permission to fulfill his end of, or rather her end of the deal, and then the episode just ends, and I cannot believe that this episode was only 22 minutes long. So that's the overview of the plot. And the reason I'm going into that much detail with outlining the plot is that that is basically just as much as we're getting. And with this being episode 4 of a 12-part series, and now that we're a third of the way through, and they're really taking their time here, it's making me reevaluate what is actually going to happen with this season. I think that they're going for something that is going to be a lot more subdued with the explication of the outer world than I thought perhaps it might be. Because in my review for episode 3, I thought that that's the direction they were going to be going, with having, the introduction of the Bat Devil and getting those moments of introspection with Pawa and her backstory and whatnot. And for sure, we certainly got that at the front of this episode. We got another flashback, and how her in the fetal position with her cat then mirrored where she is now within the stomach of the Bat Devil, of course. But past that point, it seemed to me that what they're doing here is they're actually enforcing the character of Denji and Pawa with exactly where they were in the previous episode. This episode seems to just kind of enforce where they are and establish that the stakes for them are still pretty much life and death. And it's kind of funny how that juxtaposes with in this life and death situation, one of them is living for a cat and the other is living for that. So having that sort of juxtaposition against Hayakawa and his motivation of being justice and right and wrong and the full archetypical good stoic no nonsense cop is very, very apt. But nonetheless, what the rest of this episode does is it shows the conviction these two characters have, and it kind of seems as though this episode is showing a continuation of growing pains for the three characters and how they interact with each other and very much indeed themselves in this world. You know, this is definitely the most amount of singular screen time we got for Hayakawa in the series thus far. We got to see how much of this show is interested in the interpersonal dynamic, and that was what I was in. That's what I've been talking about in my review so far. Is that are we going to get a massive character arc that's just going to get more complex as time goes on? Are we going to get a more complicated world, and that's very maximalist with the external conflict as time goes on? Or are they going to take a more subdued approach and kind of keep things minimal and just do that very, very well? And whilst initially I kind of had that idea in mind, I still had it in the back of my head that they were still going to kind of up the complexity, up the complexity, up the complexity with the external conflict in the storyline. So now this has completely taken me by surprise, in that we are officially a third of the way through this show. We're 4 episodes deep, and they're actually, they're keeping everything pretty character centric. So even though on a seasonal point of view, from a seasonal structure viewpoint, we can say that we're still very much in the early stages of the second act. Nonetheless, you get this idea that things are changing, but in a way not that we're putting the foot on the pedal, but rather we're now able to kind of be given breathing room. In a way, it feels as though with the first 3 episodes, we were really getting a lot of the kind of the plot and setup out of the way. And now a new dynamic has been formed. And given the fact that we've seen the amount of characters that are in the OP for this series, we understand that there probably is going to be a lot of back and forth. And having, especially, that last scene between Denji and Pawa, and having this episode end on that sort of humorous plot point is showing me, oh wait, okay, so yes, we are going to get to this particular place by the end of the season with Denji's character and Pawa's character and possibly Hayakawa. That's fine, but the show isn't just going blow for blow, all killer, no filler. Just everything has to be the most relevant, and there's no room to breathe. And this is all super serious and dark and edgy. No, there's a real sense of levity. There's a real sense of just characterization for the sake of characterization, just character time for the sake of character time. So overall, this episode really impressed me in the sense that it is clear that the show writers have a very distinct plan for this show, because everything that's, and the reason we're able to say this is because it's not just the idea of they're giving us, planting these seeds for them all to pay off by the end of the season and la-di-da, everything's wrapped up in a neat little bow. It's like, no, each episode is having its own centric arc. Again, we can see that with Pawa, with her level of introspection and worrying and fretting inside her head, and then leading to the playfulness by the end of the episode. And then at the front of the episode, of course, with Denji, we have him just white-knuckling. He's looking for his dream, his disgusting juvenile dream. And then at the end of the episode, it's such a coy turnaround on the idea of, well, he got what he really wanted, but is he ready to get what he wants? And then, of course, with Hayakawa, we get something of the same idea, in that he wants to do the right thing, only he's now seeing that for doing the right thing doesn't just mean that the characters of Denji and Pawa have to change. It's very much with him being pushed out of a comfort zone as well. So overall, I'm wary of kind of talking in circles about this. The only last thing I'll mention is that seeing yet a different animated end credit scene for the episode was like a real joy to see. I very, very much enjoyed the inclusion of that as well, for sure. Overall, I think that in the first 3 episodes, I was theorizing to what degree is characterization going to matter in this type of show? Because yes, this show is about distinct characters, but is the show as a result of these characters in particular? yes, we can work with archetypes, but what else are we going to do with the archetypes? Are we going to have some massive way of subverting them and doing something totally different? Are we going to do something more conventional, but do the conventional thing in a way that is very, very satisfying? Or are we going to use everything that's happening as a means to an end of having the lavish action sequences? And I think that Chainsaw Man thus far seems to be touching all three of those in in a way in which it feels balanced, but as of this episode, it's also showing that it's able to kind of lean back and forth. It's able to have these moments where it's kind of really delivering on the external conflict and kind of like, again, putting their foot down on the pedal. And then halfway through the episode, they're able to then spend the second half of the episode kind of leaning back and seeing, no, we've had our fun, and now this is where the characters are. So in a way, this is making me it's making me curious to consider the entire season of Chainsaw Man as one elongated story. As rather than this being a story of chapters, it's rather just one very long novella, for lack of a better term. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it's one long movie. It certainly does have its its act breaks, or rather you can say its chapter ends, or its book endings, if you want to put it that way. It's flowing in a way that it's not that it doesn't feel incremental. It's not that it doesn't feel A goes to B and B goes to C. It's just from a not even necessarily a tonal point of view. I think genuinely one could even say an emotional point of view. It's seeming to ebb and flow in a way that I didn't actually think it was going to begin with. Be that as it may, that is my review for episode 4 of Chainsaw Man. Really loving this series. It's going to be a couple days before I can film again, but I'm dying to do so. I'll try my best to do the last 8 episodes just all in one day, just because I'm totally enthralled with this show. I really, really am. It's been a while since I've watched a show that just completely hooks me from the very first episode, and now that we're a third of the way through this show, it's just maintaining the hook in me. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching my review, whether you're supporting me on Patreon or you're just a YouTube subscriber. Either way, thank you so much for going out of your way to give me a chance and to listen to what I have to say. And I think that's pretty much it. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thanks for watching.